Unlawful State Switzerland. Public disclosure by citizens Daniel Sulser and Andrea Sulser. Unlawful State Switzerland. The case in which the Swiss Confederation conceals the offences and crimes of its federal and state employees and their private cronies, destroys the existence of its citizens and attempts to silence them. Can Switzerland remain a state governed by the rule of law? Switzerland, through its inhuman and anti-citizen measures, has destroyed the economic existence of its own citizens. This includes a two-family house, bank accounts, inheritance from deceased parents, pension fund, occupational retirement the second pillar, and company assets. In 6 years, the Confederation achieved the objective of annihilation and caused private damages to the citizens exceeding 10 million Swiss francs. Their economic existence and thus a reasonable life have been destroyed. The Confederation is responsible for remedying the damage. Requests for solutions dated September 1st, 2025 and September 16th, 2025 were ignored by the Swiss Federal Council. Even before the deadline for a response had passed, hacker attacks on the citizens' Google account in Lübeck, Germany, where the citizens have been living since 2022, including the linked YouTube channel /@Andrea and Daniel, escalated. Access to these accounts from the citizens' mobile devices was selectively blocked. Since the citizens intended to publish the offences and crimes, Switzerland is doing everything to prevent this. Instead of promptly seeking a reasonable solution with the citizens and resolving the matter sensibly, Switzerland, with apparent support from the Federal Council, prefers the annihilation of the citizens and escalation. The values of rule of law, democracy, and constitution are now being thrown out by the Confederation without compromise, moral obligation, or responsibility toward its citizens. The Swiss government is accountable. It is their duty, regardless of any objection they might invoke. The lack of a solution is incomprehensible to anyone thinking democratically or in terms of the rule of law. The case originated with the abusive acquisition and development of the DDPS sports app, introduced in 2019 with significant competition violations in the Swiss Army and civilian market. The Confederation stole the innovation from the startup PerformFun Ltd, drove the startup out of the market, and eventually destroyed it through criminal measures, including the existence of the citizens and their 3 companies. However, the unlawful forces of the Confederation and their cronies will not succeed in sweeping the offences and crimes of Swiss government members, federal judges, federal and state employees and private cronies under the rug. Unlawful forces also include the federal representatives themselves. They seek to protect themselves from conviction by seizing state power. The unlawful, unconstitutional and criminal court rulings cannot serve this purpose. The facts clearly demonstrate the criminal acts and omissions. The nationalist employ protection from crime conviction by the federal courts, the federal prosecutor's office and paid lawyers is evident, for example in the numerous criminal complaints filed by the citizens with the Swiss Federal Prosecutor's Office since March 2023. These complaints have been delayed until today. A May 2025 ruling by the extraordinary Federal Prosecutor did not change this. His decision is as unlawful as the other judicial proceedings in this matter. The immense effort and resources expended by the Confederation over more than 6 years to suppress information, discredit and silence the citizens will not pay off. Not even the mentioned nationalist protection of federal and state employees and their cronies. On the contrary, Reports from the citizens about the criminal behavior of numerous high-ranking representatives of the Confederation and its institutions have already reached parts of the population, European politics and media. The machinations and the handling of citizens by Swiss institutions will continue to circulate. Switzerland, particularly the unlawful courts and the Swiss government, Federal Council, through autocratic behavior against the citizen, the country, and at the expense of the population and businesses, has caused significant reputational, if not already economic and political, damage. What Switzerland does not want to exist, it denies, as consistently seen in this case. That is, the case is suppressed and associated elements destroyed, such as the startup and the citizens who insist on constitutional protection and compensation. The media cooperate, with some initial exceptions as detailed below. It is unlikely that in countries where rule of law and democracy are actively preserved, such citizen-hostile behavior would be approved. Notably, during over 45 years of professional activity, the citizens provided services to Switzerland, including company formation, innovation creation, value creation, and officer service in the Swiss Army with an above-average number of service days. Switzerland has, through the distraction of citizens, effectively betrayed them. The loss of trust will affect all forms of cooperation with Switzerland, in international relations, business, and political dealings. From a democratic and rule of law perspective, this reaction is justified and ultimately preserves democracy and the rule of law. The Confederation would do well to rectify the damage responsibly and proactively, both with the citizens and internally. It must be noted that Switzerland has no independent constitutional court. Constitutional violations submitted by the citizens were merely assessed by an extended panel of judges, which included the judge who committed the constitutional violation, if the constitutional complaint was even addressed. This, along with the abusive denial of legal representation for the citizens, they had no legal counsel in any proceedings, and the resulting arbitrary power of judges and procedural leaders allowed the dependent federal courts to irreversibly, ostensibly lawfully, but entirely unlawfully and significantly criminally, eliminate the citizens. Corruption is omnipresent. It was neither stopped by the Swiss Federal Prosecutor's Office, nor the Swiss Parliament, nor the Swiss government. Not all, but many were and are part of the corruption, including the media, which mostly remained silent, with few initial exceptions, such as Die Weltwoche, issue 46, November 14, 2019, titled Amherst Idea Theft, Serious Allegations Against the Defense Office, and the independent Mark Anzeiger, February 2, 2022, titled Entrepreneur from Auschwitz Takes DDPS Chief to Court, among a few other smaller publications. All were subsequently effectively silenced. If all media reported freely, cases like this would not be possible. Additional facts as per criminal complaints. The renewed solution request of September 1, 2025 was ignored by the Federal Council. Citizens Daniel and Andrea Sulser have no option but to make public the offences, crimes and their perpetrators. Key facts supported by documentation. Switzerland, DDPS, released a sports app in March 2019 with massive competition violations, copying, claiming innovation as their own, cross-subsidization. FDF did not issue a ruling regarding compensation claims from the startup or Daniel Sulser privately. In June 2021, the startup and Daniel Sulser filed lawsuits against Federal Councillor Viola Amherd and other federal and state officials. DDPS FDF under Viola Amherd built a massive web of lies. Legal staff Simon Miller and Dr. Raphael Kremer, in collaboration with DDPS General Secretariat Tony Eder, etc., submitted these with the lawsuit's response and irrelevant FDF rulings to the Federal Court President Hans-Georg Seiler. The plaintiffs exposed this web of lies extensively. Expected lawful action. Judge Hans-Georg Seiler should have ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. Switzerland should have paid 15 million Swiss francs in damages. Actual Swiss government and judicial behavior. Federal councillors Oli Maurer and Karin Keller-Sutter covered the abuses. The federal court limited itself to dismissing the case against Viola Amherd. Switzerland offered no remedy to the plaintiffs. The goal was only the destruction of the startup. Unlawful retaliatory actions against the entrepreneurs. Surveillance, tracking, eavesdropping, harassment, intrusion into home, car and boat, threats of violence, manipulation of social environment, intimidation. Business sabotage, hacking, data manipulation, reputation damage. Social media and email manipulation, continuous hacking of private accounts. Property damage, obstruction of mail and deliveries. Manipulation of sailboats, travel prevention. Show trials and attempted enforcement. Complete elimination of economic existence. Federal Prosecutor's Office delayed criminal complaints. Citizens have no resources left. Communication is blocked. Switzerland deliberately and maliciously forces the citizens onto the street. Summary. Innovation stolen, startup destroyed, citizens targeted for total elimination. Federal Prosecutor delays complaints. Federal Council avoids solutions. The Swiss People's Party SVP and other parties do nothing. This is autocratic, citizen hostile and nationalist behavior. Key question. Will Switzerland adopt this approach fully? Or can a reasonable solution still be agreed upon now? The citizens are willing. Remarks. Why do officials, knowing their own misconduct, put citizens to the street? Switzerland has acted like an autocratic state, eliminating rightful owners, lying to the population, preventing resolution. All involved are aware of the innovation theft and crimes. Daniel Sulser and Andrea Sulser. Persons involved. Viola Amherd, Oli Maurer, Albert Rösti, Karin Keller-Sutter, Hans-Georg Seiler, Floros Aubry-Girardin, Julia Henny, Stefan Hartmann, Raphael Kremer, Simon Müller, Toni Eder, Martin Rinlisbacher, Adrian Gassmann, Gerhard Saladin, Daniel Baumgartner, Mark Wegmüller, Thomas Wies, René Allmann, Philipp Rüboch, Matthias Remund, Walter Mengisen, Pascal Stöckli, Marco Anri, Urs Walter, Franz Fischer, Pierre-Ivan Fanny, Jacqueline Heer, Hubert Bittel, Hans Wille, Paul Perrault, Caroline Kirchschläger, Sahar Milani, Rudi Montanari, Christine Kiss, Thomas Wittmer, Monique Giametti, Yves Rüdi, Mike Hennel, Peter Kappeler, Ute Wart, Sandra Thompson, Daniel Sutullo, Cornelia Imholz, Adrian Gigax, Livio Stocke, Laura Romagna, Urs Eichenberger, and others. Remark. Unfortunately, the Swiss Confederation is trying to prevent our communication. Please forward this message about the unlawful and inhuman action. Make copies, share with friends, scan and email, or visit YouTube to watch our videos. Please share the link. We will continue the fact-checking by publishing criminal complaints. Signatures: Daniel Sulser, citizen, former majority shareholder and CEO of the startup Perform Fun Ltd, bankrupt. Andrea Sulser, citizen, co-affected and contributing citizen, former shareholder and employee of the startup Perform Fun Ltd, bankrupt. We thank you very much.